ahead and disconnect our battery here. Same on the ground. Go ahead and use a pry tool to go ahead and remove our center cap. Use a 19mm socket to loosen and remove the lug nuts. Remove the wheel and set it aside. We're going to use our trim tool. We want to remove our inner fender liner. So we're just going to reach up between here and the liner and pop out our buttons on the other side. Pry and tap. And do this for the remaining of the buttons. Go ahead and remove our liner here. On the driver's side, we're going to go in and we're going to remove this 10mm bolt from this heat shield on the side of our motor mount. Go ahead and spin out that bolt the rest of the way. And go ahead and remove our shield here. Slide back the plastic cover on your input shaft to your steering gearbox. Now I want to go ahead and pull our steering shaft off the splined drive unit to our gearbox. The bolt on the back side clamp goes through and clamps it in place. In order to get that bolt to have better access to it, just grab one of your wheels and rotate it so that shaft turns. Now that we have access to it, you can go ahead and remove that bolt. Before we do that, we're going to use a crayon or a marker of some sort to line things up. We'll line that back up and match that up here. Your other option you can do is go to the inside of the vehicle, hook up a bungee cord or a strap to the steering wheel and around the brake pedal. Use an 11mm socket with your ratchet. Go ahead and loosen this bolt. And we'll go ahead and remove it. Go ahead and set that bolt aside once you get it out. Go ahead and work the shaft off of the gearbox. Once you have that loose, go ahead and push it up out of the way. Using a 13mm gear wrench, we're removing this nut on the starter, which is going to allow us to pull this cable off right here. Remove the wire from the starter. Reach in here and pull this through the motor mount. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to support the engine. We're going to use a wide block of wood and we're going to span it across the oil pan itself. And we're not going to lift the engine, we just want to support it. I'm going to use a 15mm swivel socket and extension here to remove this bolt. Using our 15mm swivel socket and extensions, we're going to remove these two rear monomount bolts. Using a 13mm socket and extension, remove this forward mounted bolt on this bracket. Using a 15mm deep socket and swivel, we're going to remove this forward bolt here. It's a nut coming off of a stud there. There's a brace that comes through here. It has a 13mm bolt right between the oil pan and the exhaust. Let's go ahead and loosen that. With that lower bolt removed, you can loosen this bracket and just set it aside. I'm going to go ahead and use a 20mm wrench to remove this stud right here. Jack up the driver's side of that motor and see if we can move this mount around. So we twisted our mount to the right. I'm going to try and work this towards the front of the vehicle and bring it down underneath. Feed our motor mount up through the front. All right, putting our mount in, we have our port right here for our cable to go through, so we're putting this in upside down. And try and snake this down and around. And reach up through the front, and we're going to get our stud lined up on this mount here. And install our two rear bolts for the back of the motor mount. I'm going to go ahead and tighten up our bolts. Just tighten those up pretty good. And take our bracket here. Put that over that like so. We're going to install the nut on the stud side here. Get the thread started. I'm going to take our bolt and then feed that through the front side of this mount. Once again, easier to access from underneath. Let's feed our cable through the mount. And we'll get that anchored onto our starter. And we'll get that washer and nut put on there. Get that tightened down. Go ahead and get our washer placed on there. Go ahead and get the nut thrown on there. And we'll go ahead and snug that down. I want to make sure that that nut is on there snug, but not super, super tight. Once it bottoms out, just give it a little bit more. And we're going to slowly lower our engine down. Now once you have your bushing lined up with the mount, go ahead and slide your bolt in. Let's go ahead and tighten up our horizontal motor mount bolt. Make sure that's good and tight. I'm going to go ahead and install our heat shield on the side of the motor mount bracket. Once we get that started, we'll go ahead and tighten it down. Let's go ahead and just snug that bolt down. Let's go ahead and lower our steering shaft down. And previous to removing this, we did leave a marker line right here, and we have our mark right here. And go ahead and work the steering shaft down onto the splines here. I went ahead and put some blue Loctite on our bolt here. We're going to line that up and get that threaded in. I'm going to go ahead and torque this down to 30 foot-pounds. Slide our coupler cover down. Go ahead and remove the strap off of your steering wheel and the brake. Install our back support bolt. And snug that down into place. Once it bottoms out a little bit more, and it should be good. Let's tighten up the bolt here on our front bracket. Once that gets snug, give it that extra, maybe a quarter of a turn, make sure it's tight. We have our nut that goes onto the stud. I'm going to go ahead and tighten that one down. Use a gear wrench to tighten up this nut. Once that one bottoms out, give it that little extra, snug that down pretty tight. I'll go ahead and install our piece here. I'm going to tuck this up into place. You basically just feed the button through the other side, and we're going to press that through and on. Continue this process for the rest of your buttons. You can go ahead and tuck this in. Go ahead and install your wheel. Get all of our lug nuts started by hand. Once these are all on, I'm going to go ahead and snug those down. Go ahead and torque our wheels down to 95 foot-pounds. We'll go ahead and install your center cap by lining up the little ports here with your lug nuts and pop it on. Go ahead and install your battery terminals onto your battery.